She thought I was just the ashes in the fireplace, unfit to sit beside a diamond. He paraded another woman at a magnificent gala that actually belonged to me. When my name was called as the owner of it all, I watched his arrogant face crumble into the dust of fear beneath my heels. Before the story begins, please let me know in the comments which state or country you are watching from. Do not forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you even more thrilling stories. The mirror in front of me reflected the image of a hesitant woman. I stared at my own face, trying to recognize the person who had long been buried under an exhausting routine of household chores. My slightly trembling hand held a maroon lipstick. It was the only luxury item I kept in the drawer of this old vanity. It had been a very long time since I last touched it. Since marrying Ryan 3 years ago, my makeup routine was limited to baby powder and cheap drugstore moisturizer. Ryan always said he loved simplicity. He liked natural women. But for some reason, my heart was racing today with the desire to look different. Today was a special day. It was not our wedding anniversary, nor was it my birthday. Today was the grand opening of the Sterling Grand Hotel, a massive project making headlines across the city and even the country. And my husband, Ryan, worked there. He said he received a special invitation because of his outstanding performance. I thought maybe he would take me along. Maybe he wanted to introduce me to his colleagues. So, I secretly prepared my best dress. It was not a new dress, but an old one I had kept neatly tucked away. The fabric was smooth, the cut elegant. Even though the style might be a little outdated for those obsessed with high fashion, to me, this dress was the remnant of my past glory that I kept tightly hidden. I applied the lipstick slowly. The deep red color brought my face, usually pale from exhaustion, back to life. I smiled faintly. "Beautiful," I whispered to myself, trying to build my confidence. I imagined Ryan walking into the bedroom, seeing me, smiling proudly, and offering his hand. The sound of a car engine echoed in the driveway. My heart raced faster. It must be him. He came home early to get ready. I smoothed my simply pinned hair and sprayed a little perfume from a bottle that was only half full. Heavy footsteps echoed up the stairs. The bedroom door was pushed open roughly. "Grace, where is my black dress shirt?" Ryan's sentence hung in the air. He stood in the doorway, still wearing his wrinkled work shirt. His eyes swept over my appearance from head to toe. It was not a look of admiration I received, but a glare that made my blood run cold, a look of sheer disgust. It was as if he had just seen a misplaced pile of garbage. He stepped inside, kicking the door shut behind him. "Why are you painted up like a circus clown?" His voice was sharp, piercing straight to my core. My smile vanished instantly. "Ryan, I thought tonight was the grand opening of the hotel where you work. I got my dress ready. I thought maybe you would want to take me." Ryan erupted into laughter, a dry, condescending laugh. He walked toward me, causing me to instinctively step back until my waist hit the vanity. "Take you? Who do you think you are?" Ryan scoffed harshly. He pointed a rough index finger at my face. "Look in the mirror, Grace. Look at yourself. That is a high society event. It will be full of executives, investors, and important people. If I bring you, where would I hide my face? You smell like bleach and frying oil. Your hands are rough from scrubbing floors, and your style is completely white trash. Do you want to humiliate me in front of my bosses?" Tears began to well up in my eyes, but I held them back with all my might. "But Ryan, I am your wife. It is normal for a wife to accompany her husband to an important event. A wife's job is in the house, taking care of the kitchen and the bedroom," he barked. Suddenly, his hand swiped the small cosmetic bag on the table. With a swift motion, he dumped its contents. My setting powder scattered, making a mess on the hardwood floor. My favorite lipstick rolled off the edge and snapped under his leather dress shoe. "Ryan," I cried out, my voice choking. "Why are you even dressing up? Huh? Did you really think you were invited? Just finish the mountain of chores in the kitchen," he yelled again. His voice thundered in the cramped bedroom. "Look at the sink. It is still full of dishes. The floor is not mopped. The dirty laundry is piling up. That is your job, not strutting around acting pretty in front of a mirror." He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look into his furious eyes. "Listen to me, Grace. Tonight, I am going with someone much more fitting. Someone who can boost my career, not a burden like you. So, wash that cheap makeup off your face, change into your baggy sweatpants, and do your job as a useful wife." After shoving me back into the vanity chair, he turned toward his own closet. He pulled out the best custom suit he had just bought last week, using what he claimed was his corporate bonus. I knew perfectly well it was this month's grocery money that he had cut short. He changed quickly, sprayed an expensive cologne that was overwhelmingly strong, and slicked back his hair. I could only sit frozen. It felt like a massive boulder had crushed my chest. It hurt so much, not just because of his yelling, but because he truly did not see me as a human being with feelings. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a household appliance. I am leaving. Do not wait up for me. Lock the doors. And remember, if the house is not spotless by the time I get back, you will regret it. He threatened while adjusting his tie in the mirror, right next to my pathetic reflection. He did not even bother to look at me in the glass. Ryan walked out of the room, striding away without a single backward glance. Seconds later, I heard his car engine roar as he drove off. Silence. The house fell dead silent, leaving only me and my shattered dignity scattered on the floor alongside the broken powder. I stared at the crushed pieces of maroon lipstick on the hardwood. That lipstick was expensive, incredibly expensive. It was a limited edition Christian Louboutin I had bought long before I decided to play the role of the simple, modest Grace in order to find genuine love from a man. True love that I foolishly thought existed in Ryan. Slowly, I stood up. I did not cry. The stinging pain in my heart gradually morphed into something else. Something cold, hard, and burning. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly. Outside, the sky was growing dark. The city lights of Manhattan began to flicker on, including the massive spotlights shining from the heart of the city, right where the Sterling Grand Hotel stood majestically. A five-star hotel whose construction I had personally approved 3 years ago. A hotel that was just one of hundreds of assets under the umbrella of Sterling Enterprises. My company. Ryan said I would embarrass him. He said I only belonged in the kitchen. He said he was going with someone more fitting. I let out a low laugh. A laugh that sounded foreign even to my own ears. I grabbed a makeup wipe, cleaning up the smudged lipstick at the corners of my mouth. But I did not wipe it all off. Instead, I perfected it. I walked toward a hidden panel behind the row of my faded winter coats in the closet. Concealed there was a small wall safe. I punched in the combination code. The heavy steel door popped open, revealing a sleek black smartphone I had not activated for urgent personal business in 3 years, alongside a solid gold access card. I turned the phone on. Within seconds, dozens of notifications flooded the screen. I ignored them all and pressed a single number on speed dial. Hello. The voice on the other end sounded shocked, yet deeply respectful. Miss Grace. Is this really you? James. I answered flatly. My voice was no longer shaking like it was when Ryan yelled at me. My voice was now firm, full of absolute authority. The voice of a leader accustomed to commanding thousands of employees. Yes, ma'am. Good Lord. You finally reached out. What is wrong, ma'am? Is there an emergency? Asked James, my fiercely loyal executive assistant, who had guarded the secret of my true identity all this time. Where are you? I am already at the venue for the grand opening, ma'am. Representing you, as usual. The entire board of directors is present. Good, I said, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Listen to me carefully, James. Prep the helicopter right now. Pick me up at the usual landing zone at the country club golf course behind this suburban neighborhood. You have 10 minutes. A brief silence followed on the line. Understood, ma'am. Wait, are you coming to the grand opening? Yes, I am coming. And James. Yes, ma'am. Prepare the black haute couture gown that arrived from Milan last week. Bring your best glam squad and makeup artists into the helicopter. I do not have much time. Consider it done, Madam CEO. I ended the call. I looked around this cramped, stuffy bedroom. A room that had been the silent witness to my useless devotion for 3 years. My eyes landed on our wedding photo hanging slightly crooked on the wall. A photo where I smiled with pure sincerity, while Ryan smiled with a look of absolute triumph. A smile whose true meaning I only just now realized. You said I only belonged in the kitchen, Ryan. I whispered to the photo. Tonight, I will show you exactly who owns the kitchen, the hotel, and the entire stage you are standing on. Enjoy your last 15 minutes feeling important, Ryan. Because after this, I am sending you right back where you belong, straight into the gutter. I walked out of the bedroom, leaving behind the mess my husband had made. I was not going to clean it up. Not ever again. The helicopter carrying me sliced through the dark New Jersey night sky toward Manhattan. Down below, the traffic jams snaked like rivers of red taillights. But up here, everything was dark and serene. Inside the VIP cabin of the chopper, 2 makeup artists worked with lightning speed on my face and hair. James sat across from me with an iPad in his hand. His face was tense but filled with anticipation. As I let my face be painted with top-tier products whose price tags could buy my husband's pride 10 times over, my mind drifted back to 3 years ago. The time when the biggest mistake of my life began. I was Grace Sterling, the sole heiress of the founder of Sterling Enterprises. Since birth, I had lived in a golden cage. Everyone who approached me always had ulterior motives regarding money, connections, or power. My last ex-boyfriend was even caught trying to sell my father's corporate secrets to pay off his massive gambling debts in Vegas. From that moment on, I was sick of it. I was sick of the luxury that only brought absolute superficiality. When my father passed away and left his entire business empire to me, I felt incredibly lonely. It was freezing at the top, and I craved genuine warmth. So, I made an insane decision. I went undercover. I used my middle name, rented a modest suburban house, and took a job as a standard administrative clerk in a small logistics firm. A firm that, ironically, was a distant subsidiary of Sterling Enterprises. But nobody knew that. That was where I met Ryan. He was not the most handsome man, nor the smartest, but at the time, he seemed sincere. He was a hardworking new hire. He often brought me homemade lunches, helped me carry stacks of files, and listened to my complaints about the struggles of living paycheck to paycheck. I fell in love with his simplicity. I thought, this is a man who loves me for who I am, not because I own skyscrapers. When he proposed to me with a cheap 14-karat gold ring, I cried tears of joy. I accepted his proposal without hesitation. I decided to keep my true identity a secret until the right time. I wanted to build a life from scratch with him. I wanted to experience the struggle together. How incredibly naive I was. The first year of marriage felt sweet, even though money was tight. I quit my office job at his request and focused on being a homemaker. But slowly, Ryan's mask began to crack. "Grace, I need $10,000, he said one night a year ago. He looked stressed. "There is a great investment opportunity from a guy at work. This is for our future. So we do not have to keep renting, so we can buy a real house." I, who at the time held a secret savings account that I claimed was a small inheritance from my rural parents, gave it to him without many questions. I wanted to support my husband. "This is the last of the money I have, Ryan. Please use it wisely," I said at the time. Lying, considering the balance in my primary checking account was in the billions. But that investment never yielded any returns. Ryan claimed he was scammed. I forgave him. Then the next month, he asked for more money. His excuse was that he needed to network and buy gifts for executives to secure a promotion. I started getting suspicious, but I still gave it to him little by little, hoping it truly was for his career. My suspicion finally exploded 1 week ago. I was dry cleaning his suit jacket that he had carelessly tossed on the sofa. A printed receipt fell from his inner pocket. I picked it up. It was a receipt from a high-end jeweler, a white gold necklace with a diamond pendant. The price was $25,000. The purchase date was 3 days prior. My heart stopped beating for a second. $25,000. Just last week he told me he did not have enough money to pay the electricity bill, forcing me to sell my fake bridal earrings. Or so he thought they were fake. Curiosity drove me to dig deeper. While Ryan was in the shower, I unlocked his phone. He had forgotten that I knew his passcode from watching him type it out once. And right there, in his text messages, I found absolute hell. There was a contact saved as my future. The profile picture was of a young, pretty, trendy woman, and what made my chest completely cave in was that she was wearing the exact same necklace from the receipt. Their messages were sickening. "When are you going to divorce that maid?" the woman wrote. "Patience, babe. I am just draining the last of her inheritance money. She is so stupid, so easy to manipulate. Besides, she loves cleaning the house." "It is great. I do not even have to pay for a housekeeper," Ryan replied. My tears fell as I read that text. The maid. He called his own wife a maid. So all this time, his love, his attention, was all just for the money. The inheritance I had made up an elaborate story about. But that was not even the worst part. I opened his photo gallery and found a picture of a document that made my blood boil. It was a photo of our house deed, the small suburban home we lived in now. I bought it 2 years ago with my own money, but I put it in Ryan's name to protect his pride as the head of the household. In the photo, the deed was being held by someone's hand against the backdrop of a casino poker table. Ryan was not just cheating. He was a degenerate gambler, and he had mortgaged the very roof over our heads. Miss Grace, James's voice shattered my daydream. I snapped back to the present inside the helicopter, which was now beginning its descent. We have arrived at the hotel's rooftop helipad, ma'am, James said. Be careful. He must have seen the flash of sheer rage and sorrow in my eyes just now. Your gown is ready. We have 5 minutes before the MC announces the primary owner. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. The stinging pain of that betrayal was still there, but it was now tightly sealed beneath a layer of iron resolve. I stared at my reflection in the small mirror handed to me by the makeup artist. The woman in the mirror was no longer Grace, the obedient wife wearing a faded t-shirt. The woman in the mirror was Grace Sterling, the ruthless corporate queen feared by every competitor on Wall Street. My eyes were sharp, my lips fiery red, and my chin held high. James, I called out, standing up as the helicopter doors slid open. The night wind whipped against my face, blowing the sweeping train of my magnificent black gown. Yes, ma'am. Make sure all the evidence I sent you yesterday is queued up on the main ballroom screens the exact second I give the signal. 100% ready, ma'am. The IT team has hijacked the hotel's presentation system. Ryan will have absolutely nowhere to run. Good. I stepped down from the helicopter. My stiletto heels clicked sharply against the concrete landing pad. Let us go down. I have some trash to take out tonight. Tonight, Ryan was not just going to lose his job. He was going to lose everything. His pride, his reputation, and his little mistress. He thought he was on top of the world because he could bring his side piece to a luxury gala. He was dead wrong. He was walking straight into the lion's den, and the lion was the very wife he had ordered to wash the dishes. I walked toward the private VIP elevator. Every step I took was a countdown to his absolute destruction. The private elevator carrying me down from the helipad to the VIP holding room felt like it was moving in slow motion, as if giving me the time to replay the events from 3 nights ago. The exact event that provided my primary ammunition for tonight. The night I found the weapon that would metaphorically blow a hole right through Ryan's head. It was raining heavily that night. Ryan had not come home yet. He claimed he was working late preparing for the hotel's grand opening. In the past, I would have believed him blindly. I would have made him hot tea and waited on the sofa until I fell asleep. But that night was different. My suspicions about his affair were already confirmed. But I needed more than just proof of infidelity to destroy him. I needed something that would murder him professionally. I wanted him to lose not just his wife, but his entire future. The wall clock struck 1:00 a.m. when Ryan finally came home, faking an exhausted expression. He walked straight into the bathroom, leaving his leather briefcase tossed carelessly on the dining table. His sloppy habit, which I used to patiently clean up, now became his fatal flaw. With a racing heart, I opened his briefcase. Inside was his corporate laptop and several file folders. I knew his laptop password. His mother's birth date, a woman just as narcissistic as he was. The screen lit up. I was not looking for chat logs or photos of his mistress anymore. I had enough of those to hand to my divorce lawyers. I was looking for anything tied to Sterling Enterprises. I needed to know how my fiercely average husband managed to land a logistics manager position at my 5-star hotel. The recruitment process at my company was notoriously brutal and multi-layered. I opened a folder marked Personal. Tucked inside was a scanned PDF file. The title read, Board of Directors Recommendation Letter. My eyes widened as I opened it. It was a letter stating that Ryan had 5 years of stellar managerial experience, signed by Mr. Henderson, the former chief operating officer of Sterling Enterprises. My hands shook with rage. I had fired Mr. Henderson 6 months ago for corporate embezzlement. His signature on this letter was dated 2 months ago, long after he had been ousted. This was blatant forgery. Ryan, or whoever helped him, had falsified vital documents to sneak him into the company. This was not just an ethical breach. This was felony document forgery. You absolute idiot! I hissed quietly. You forged the signature of a man who was already thrown out on the street. But that was not all. I kept digging. My business instincts told me something was deeply wrong with Ryan's recent lifestyle. A new manager's salary, even at a luxury hotel, would never be enough to fund Brittany's lifestyle. The mistress I had seen all over social media flaunting designer bags and eating at Michelin-star restaurants. Where was the money coming from? My savings that he drained were completely gone a month ago. I opened the weekly financial reports he seemed to be working on in Excel. My eyes, accustomed to scrutinizing billion-dollar balance sheets, quickly caught a glaring anomaly in the catering vendor procurement column. Listed there was a payment to a vendor called Fresh Fields Catering for $150,000 to supply imported fruits for the grand opening event. That number was completely absurd. As the owner, I knew our standard vendor pricing. The market rate for that exact order was $50,000 at the absolute maximum. There was a markup, an embezzlement of $100,000. I immediately took photos of the laptop screen using my secure phone. Then I cross-checked the data. I texted James that very second, even though it was 2:00 a.m. James, run a background check on a vendor called Fresh Fields Catering. Find out who owns it and track the money trail. 5 minutes later, James replied. He truly was the assistant who never slept. Ma'am, the LLC is a shell company. The registered address is an empty strip mall unit in Queens. The receiving bank account is under a proxy name, but it is affiliated with a cell phone number registered to Ryan. My blood boiled all the way to my skull. So this was how he did it. My husband, the man who gave me a strict grocery allowance of $100 a week and yelled at me if the food lacked salt, was a thief in my own empire. He was stealing my company's money, his wife's money, by setting up ghost vendors. And the final puzzle piece clicked into place when I matched the date the ghost vendor funds were dispersed with the date on the receipt for the diamond necklace I found in his jacket pocket. The dates were identical. The $100,000 cleared in the morning. By noon, he bought a $25,000 necklace and transferred the remaining balance directly into Brittany's personal bank account. I closed the laptop slowly, regulating my breathing so I would not scream. That night, sitting at the cold dining table with its faded tablecloth, I found my lethal weapon. Ryan was not just a cheating husband. He was a corporate rat. He was a criminal. If his infidelity would only ruin him socially, his embezzlement and document forgery would send him straight behind bars. I stared at the closed bathroom door. I could hear Ryan humming a love song over the running water, probably picturing Brittany's face. "Sing while you still can, Ryan," I muttered that night, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. Because very soon, you will be singing inside a police interrogation room. My daydream in the elevator vanished as the heavy steel doors chimed softly and slid open. The warm lighting of the VIP corridor greeted me. I stepped out with a wicked smirk. The weapon was fully loaded in my hands. The wire transfer receipts, the forged letter, the money trail, everything was safely stored on the servers controlled by James. Tonight, I did not need a gun to assassinate a man's character. All I needed was a projector and a PowerPoint file. Ryan thought he was a genius for tricking the HR system. He had no idea the system belonged to his wife. He thought he was untouchable because he could steal corporate funds to spoil his mistress. He did not realize he was picking the homeowner's pocket while the owner was just pretending to be asleep. I gripped my designer clutch. Inside was the phone linked directly to my security team. My steps grew firmer. 3 days ago, I cried in silence because I felt betrayed. But today, those emotions had shapeshifted. It was no longer sorrow, but a ruthless, savage joy. The joy of an apex predator watching its prey wander cluelessly into a steel trap. "Wait for me, Ryan," I whispered to the empty air. "I brought a very special gift for you. Not your morning coffee or your cooked breakfast, but a one-way ticket to absolute ruin." The automated doors to the VIP control room slid open, revealing a spacious room draped in gold and maroon velvet. James was already standing there in front of a wall, entirely covered in CCTV monitors. His face was dead serious, but his eyes gleamed the moment I walked in. I knew he had been waiting for this exact moment for a long time. He had spent way too long watching his boss be degraded by a man whose entire existence was severely subpar. "Good evening, Madam CEO," James greeted, bowing respectfully. "You look breathtaking, like an incredibly fashionable Grim Reaper." I let out a low chuckle, placing my clutch on the marble table. "Save the flattery, James. Give me the sit rep. Exactly as you predicted, the rats have entered the maze." James pointed to the largest monitor in the center of the wall. My stomach dropped for a microsecond, but it was immediately replaced by a searing heat spreading through my chest as I looked at the live feed. The lobby cameras had captured their grand entrance. Walking across the red carpet meant only for guests of honor. Ryan strutted with his chin held obnoxiously high. He wore a rented tuxedo that was slightly too long in the sleeves, but he carried himself like he owned the entire building. Clinging desperately to his arm was Brittany, She wore a blindingly bright red dress that plunged too low and was covered in cheap sequins, sharply contrasting the understated elegance of the actual high society guests. But what made my jaw clench tight was the necklace resting on her chest. The necklace bought with my company's money. The necklace bought with the sweat of my brow, stolen by my own husband. And trailing behind them, walking with a wobbly but arrogant gait because of heels that were much too high for her, was Martha, my mother-in-law. She wore a gaudy, overly vibrant dress. Chunky, fake gold bracelets covered her wrists. Bracelets I was absolutely certain she bought with the cash Ryan constantly begged from me, claiming his mother was severely ill and needed medication. "Turn on the audio," I ordered coldly. James flipped a switch on the console. The ambient sound from the lobby flooded the VIP room. "Oh my, Ryan, your mother is just so proud of you." Martha's shrill voice pierced the speakers. "Look at this hotel. It is spectacular. You really are a big shot here, aren't you? Nothing like that wife of yours sitting at home. All she is good for is wasting our grocery money." Ryan laughed. A sound that made me want to vomit. "Of course, Mom. I am their top manager. If it were not for me, this whole grand opening would fall apart. Grace does not understand this world. The only thing she knows how to do is clip coupons at the supermarket." Brittany chimed in, flipping her bleached blonde hair. "I know, right? I feel so bad for you, Ryan, having a wife you can't even take to a nice dinner. She is just an embarrassment. But look at us. When I stand next to you, we look like a power couple, don't we?" "You absolutely do, Brittany. You are exactly the kind of daughter-in-law I always wanted. Gorgeous, trendy, knows how to carry herself. Once Ryan finally divorces that dead weight, you two need to get married fast." "I want a daughter-in-law I can show off to the ladies at the country club," Martha chimed in enthusiastically. My hands balled into fists so tight my acrylic nails dug into my palms. They were laughing on top of my suffering. They were celebrating their victory on a mountain of stolen cash. How utterly repulsive they were. "Enough. Cut it," I interrupted. James muted the audio. I turned to look at James. My face was an emotionless mask, but my eyes held a raging hurricane. "James, change the event rundown right now." "Yes, ma'am. What are your instructions?" James raised his iPad, ready to take notes. "First, let them walk right into the grand ballroom. Do not stop them at the door. In fact, tell the hospitality staff to escort them to the very front table. Table number 1, right front and center by the main stage." James smiled a wicked, knowing smile. "That VIP table is usually reserved for the board of directors, ma'am. Let them sit there. Let them feel like they are the king and queen of the night. The higher they fly, the more bones they will break when they hit the ground. I want every single guest to have a crystal clear view of their faces when I expose their filth." "Understood, ma'am." "And second?" "Second, make sure Mr. Gallagher and the rest of the board know that I will be doing some house cleaning on stage. Tell them not to be alarmed and just play along with the show. Mr. Gallagher will absolutely love this. He despises dishonest employees. I have already informed them, ma'am. Mr. Gallagher has even placed his legal team on standby in the right wing of the stage." Third, I walked toward the one-way glass window overlooking the upper section of the massive ballroom. From here, I could see thousands of guests beginning to fill the room. The police. 2 plainclothes NYPD detectives are already on standby near the emergency exits, and 2 more are at the main entrance. The second you give the signal, they will move in and apprehend the suspect on charges of corporate embezzlement and document forgery. Perfect. I glanced back at the monitor. Ryan and his little circus act were being escorted by a waiter toward the VIP table. Their faces looked shocked but absolutely thrilled. Ryan puffed out his chest, probably bragging to his mother that he earned that table through his sheer brilliance. Martha was busy taking selfies, flashing her tacky jewelry. Brittany was adjusting her cleavage to make it more prominent. They had no idea that table was their electric chair. "James, pull up the presentation slides. Make sure the transition from the corporate profile video directly to Ryan's criminal evidence is completely seamless. I want maximum shock value. Do not let there be a single second of delay." "Do not worry, ma'am. I will be operating the control board myself." I took a deep breath, smoothing down my hair. This black haute couture gown hugged my frame perfectly, radiating a suffocating aura of intimidation. I was no longer Grace, the miserable housewife. Tonight, I was Nemesis, the goddess of retribution. 5 minutes until the event starts, ma'am, James reminded me. The MC will call you up to deliver the opening remarks as the primary owner of Sterling Enterprises. A secret we have kept hidden until now. All right. I picked up a glass of sparkling water, wetting my throat that had gone dry from pure adrenaline. James, do you know what the most pathetic thing about a traitor is? James shook his head politely. What is it, ma'am? They always underestimate the people who love them the most purely. Ryan underestimated me because I stayed quiet. He thought my silence was weakness. He never realized that when a lion is silent, it is just calculating the exact distance to pounce. I walked toward the VIP room exit that connected directly to the backstage area. The hallway was dark and completely silent, a stark contrast to the roaring chatter inside the ballroom. Every step I took echoed, syncing perfectly with my steady heartbeat. There was no more hesitation. There was no more pity. The time for being a devoted wife expired. The second, Ryan threw my makeup bag on the floor. Now, it was time to be a ruthless CEO. I stopped right behind the heavy velvet stage curtains. I could hear the booming voice of the MC opening the gala. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sterling Grand Hotel. Tonight is a historic night. I smiled coldly in the dark. Yes, incredibly historic. Especially for you, my dearest husband. Enjoy your champagne and caviar at the front table. Because after this, your only meal is the sheer humiliation you will carry to your grave. Miss Sterling, 1 minute to go, the floor director whispered through the earpiece in my ear. I nodded. I am ready. On the small backstage monitor, I watched the camera pan to Ryan's face. He was laughing widely at a joke made by a politician sitting near him. Your last laugh, Ryan. Your very last laugh. The ballroom lights began to dim. A dramatic orchestral score swelled through the speakers. It was time for the show to begin. The massive crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling of the grand ballroom slowly dimmed. The atmosphere, which had been buzzing with the clinking of glasses and the chatter of hundreds of invited guests, shifted into a hushed, heavy anticipation. The orchestral music that had been playing softly in the background changed tempo, becoming grander, more dramatic, vibrating right through my chest. I stood behind the thick velvet curtain at the edge of the stage. My heart beat in sync with the heavy bass from the 1,000-watt sound system. Through a tiny gap in the curtain, I had a perfect view of everything. The scene playing out in front of me was a flawless masterpiece of irony. At table number 1, the very front table with the most strategic view in the room, sat the 3 human beings I wanted to destroy the most tonight. Ryan looked like he was having the time of his life. He sat with his legs crossed, a crystal flute of champagne in his right hand, while his left hand occasionally stroked Brittany's hand beside him. His face radiated pure arrogance. He felt like a little king in his own castle, completely oblivious to the fact that he was nothing more than a clown in my palace. Next to him sat Martha, my mother-in-law, who over the last 3 years never missed an opportunity to insult my cooking. She was busy with her phone. She was probably live streaming on social media, showing off to her suburban neighborhood friends that she was mingling with the elites. She laughed loudly, flashing her teeth and her excessive costume jewelry, looking shockingly out of place among the understated elegance of the other guests. And Brittany, the woman, smiled seductively, occasionally whispering something into Ryan's ear that made my husband burst into obnoxious laughter. They looked like a happy couple, a perfect match, a couple built entirely on the suffering of someone else. The authoritative voice of the MC echoed through the room, shattering the silence. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the grand opening of the Sterling Grand Hotel. Tonight is an incredibly special night for all of us. Polite applause rippled across the vast room. Ryan joined in, but with overly exaggerated claps, as if he wanted everyone to see how important and enthusiastic he was. Without further ado, the MC continued, his voice rising, building the tension. Let us welcome the figure who has remained a mystery until now, the visionary behind the creation of Sterling Enterprises and its entire global network, the sole owner who has led this empire from behind the scenes. I watched Ryan lean closer to Brittany, because I was wearing an earpiece connected to a hidden microphone placed at the VIP table thanks to James's brilliant security team. I could hear Ryan's whispers as clearly as if he were standing right next to me. It's definitely going to be some old bald guy or some fat European billionaire, Ryan whispered, chuckling condescendingly. The owner of Sterling Enterprises is notoriously secretive. It is probably because they are physically repulsive, so they hide all the time. Brittany giggled, covering her mouth with a cocktail napkin. I know, right, babe? Probably some ancient geezer with 1 foot in the grave. Not like you. You are young, handsome, A future CEO. Obviously, babe, Ryan replied, brimming with confidence. I smirked in the shadows. Enjoy the final seconds of your delusion. Ryan. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your loudest round of applause for the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Enterprises, Miss Grace Sterling. The orchestral music hit its absolute peak. The blinding main spotlight snapped on, aiming directly at the VIP double doors beside the stage, exactly where I was about to appear. At table number 1, I witnessed a truly fascinating reaction. When the name Grace Sterling was announced, Ryan did not react immediately. His brain seemed to experience a massive lag in processing the information. The name Grace was common. He probably thought it was a different Grace. But when he processed the last name Sterling, the champagne glass in his hand froze mid-air, halfway to his mouth. The towering, magnificent double doors slid open automatically. James stepped out first. He wore a crisp black suit, his face cold and strictly professional. He stood by the door and bowed respectfully, gesturing for me to walk through. I stepped out. The blinding spotlight washed over my entire body. The black haute couture gown I wore caught the light beautifully. The Swarovski crystals embedded in the fabric sparkled like stars in the night sky. My hair, usually thrown up in a messy bun with a cheap elastic, now fell in gorgeous, elegant waves crafted by the city's top stylist. My face, usually bare and oily from the steam of cooking his dinners, was now sculpted to perfection, highlighting my sharp jawline and my piercing, lethal gaze. I walked slowly. Every step I took across that marble floor felt incredibly satisfying. The sharp click of my stiletto heels echoed clack, clack, clack as if counting down the last beats of Ryan's heart. I did not look directly at the audience. I stared straight ahead, my chin held high, letting the aura of absolute power radiate from me. The waitstaff lining the red carpet bowed at a deep 90-degree angle as I passed. "Good evening, Miss Sterling," they said in unison. Their voices were firm and full of deep respect. Only then did I shift my gaze toward table number 1. The effect was spectacular, more delicious than the most expensive meal on earth. Ryan's face was dead pale, the color of a crumpled tissue. His eyes bulged, nearly popping out of their sockets. His mouth hung wide open. His jaw looked like it had unhinged and hit the floor. The champagne glass he was holding slipped through his trembling fingers, crashing onto the table and spilling its contents all over the lap of his expensive trousers. He did not even notice. He did not even blink. He stared at me as if he were looking at a ghost, the ghost of the wife he had just insulted for smelling like bleach a few hours ago. Beside him, Brittany was in an equal state of shock. She sat frozen, her dessert fork still pressed against her lips. Her eyes swept over my appearance from top to bottom, desperately comparing my $1,000,000 gown to her cheap, tacky red dress. She recognized my face, the face of the woman she had seen in a photo in Ryan's wallet, the woman she had mocked and called a maid. But the woman standing before her now looked like a queen who could buy her entire existence in a matter of seconds. Martha was the most dramatic of all. Her phone slipped from her grasp, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. She clutched her chest, gasping for air as if the oxygen in the room had suddenly been vacuumed out by my presence. She stared at me in total, unadulterated disbelief, a look that screamed the question, how is this possible? How could my pathetic, broke daughter-in-law be standing up there? I kept walking, passing their table with only a few feet between us. I intentionally slowed my pace right in front of them. I turned my head slightly, delivering a dead, freezing glare that pierced straight through Ryan's pupils. The corner of my lips ticked up, forming the faintest, most sinister smile. "Good evening, Ryan." I mouthed the words silently. Ryan violently jerked back in his seat, the chair screeching loudly against the floor. "Grace," his voice choked out. It sounded like the squeak of a rat getting stepped on. "Impossible." Whispers began to ripple through the crowd of guests. "That is Miss Sterling? She is stunning. So young. I can't believe she owns Sterling Enterprises. Her presence is incredibly intimidating." The praises buzzed in my ears, but I did not care about them. I had only one absolute focus: psychologically destroying the man currently shivering in terror in his VIP seat. I climbed the stage stairs with flawless grace. James was already waiting at the podium, handing me the microphone. I took it, feeling the weight of the metal in my hand. This was not just a microphone, it was an executioner's gavel. From the stage, I had a perfect view of the entire room, and the clearest view of all was table number 1. Ryan looked like a train wreck. He was frantically trying to wipe the spilled champagne off his pants with panicked, jerky movements. His eyes darted wildly, looking for an exit, but he realized he could not run. All eyes were on the stage, and he was sitting front and center. If he ran now, he would draw the attention of every billionaire and politician in the room. He was trapped under the blinding spotlight, forced to look up at his wife who now stood at the absolute pinnacle of the world. I tapped the microphone gently. Test. Test. The sound echoed through the massive hall, instantly silencing the remaining whispers. "Good evening, distinguished guests," I greeted. My voice was calm, deep, and authoritative. A massive departure from the quiet voice of a wife begging for a little extra grocery money. "Thank you for attending the grand opening of our flagship property." I paused for a moment, letting my eyes lock back onto Ryan's. He swallowed hard. Cold sweat was pouring down his temples. "Many have wondered why I chose to hide my identity for so long," I continued, easing into my attack strategy. "The reason is quite simple. I wanted to see honesty. I wanted to see who genuinely worked with integrity, and who was just wearing a mask to get ahead." Ryan's entire body went rigid. He knew exactly where this was going. He shook his head slowly. His mouth silently pleaded, "No, please, do not do this." But his silent begging fell on deaf ears. My heart had frozen solid the second he smashed my makeup bag. Unfortunately, my voice dropped, becoming sharper and much colder. During my time undercover, I discovered some truly disgusting things. I found pests, rats, and parasites eating away at this company from the inside. The atmosphere in the room instantly tensed. Guests exchanged confused glances, taken aback by the sudden aggressive shift in my tone. And tonight, I raised my hand, signaling the control room operator. "I am going to take out the trash right in front of all of you, because to me, corporate integrity is everything." The massive LED screen behind me, which had been displaying the elegant gold logo of Sterling Enterprises, flickered once and went pitch black. The psychological warfare was over. Ryan was already mentally shattered. He was terrified, confused, and panicking. But that was not enough. Now, it was time to destroy his life with hard facts. It was time for the second wave. The massive 30 by 15-foot LED screen behind me flared back to life with blinding white light. It was no longer a corporate logo, but a PowerPoint slide with giant blood-red text. "Internal audit. Gross misconduct." A collective gasp echoed from hundreds of guests. They were businessmen, investors, and executives. They knew exactly what a presentation like this meant in the middle of a gala. This was a public execution. I stared straight at Ryan. His face was no longer pale. It was ash gray. His hands gripped the tablecloth so hard his veins looked like they were going to pop. Brittany, sitting beside him, started to panic. Her eyes darted left and right, looking for an escape route, but two massive, stone-faced security guards had already quietly positioned themselves at the ends of their aisle. "Let us begin with a little fairy tale," I said sarcastically into the mic. "A story about an employee who thought he was a prince, even though he broke into the castle by picking the locks." I clicked the presentation remote. The first slide appeared. It was a high-resolution scan of Ryan's recommendation letter that I had found on his laptop. Next to it was an official HR statement confirming the signature was forged, complete with a digital forensic analysis. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice boomed, cutting through the dead silence. "Let me introduce Ryan, the logistics manager you have all praised for the last 6 months." Every single head in the room whipped around toward table number 1. Thousands of eyes locked onto Ryan. A secondary spotlight suddenly snapped on, beaming directly onto him, blinding him and pushing him further into the corner. He ducked his head low, desperately trying to hide his face. Ryan was hired by this company based on a recommendation letter from our former chief operating officer, Mr. Henderson. However, there's a hilarious little detail here. I smiled coldly. Henderson was fired and indicted for embezzlement 2 months before this letter was allegedly signed. So, tell me, Ryan, which ghost came back from the dead to sign your paperwork? Low, mocking laughter rippled through the crowd. Mr. Gallagher, my lead investor sitting at the adjacent VIP table, shook his head in sheer disgust. Document forgery is a felony, Ryan, a federal offense. The penalty is up to 6 years in prison, I explained, talking to him like a professor lecturing a spectacularly stupid student. Martha started crying hysterically in her seat. That is a lie. That is a lie. My son is an honest man. You are framing your own husband, Grace. You ungrateful witch, she shrieked, her shrill voice shattering the tension. I looked at my mother-in-law with mock pity. Keep your tears, Martha. The show is just getting started. Do not waste all your tissues now. I pressed the clicker again. Slide 2. The title read, Vendor Fund Embezzlement. On the screen was a clear comparison chart. The market price for imported fruits versus the invoice from Fresh Fields Catering. A clean $100,000 discrepancy. Next to it was the wire transfer receipt from that ghost LLC straight into Ryan's personal bank account. $150,000 for fruit, I asked rhetorically. Were the apples we ate tonight grown on the moon? Or maybe the grapes were watered with holy water from the Himalayas? The crowd's laughter grew louder. They were starting to enjoy the roast. They realized Ryan was just an amateur con artist trying to play in the big leagues. The fact is, I continued, my voice growing louder, dripping with rage, $100,000 of corporate funds, my money, went straight into Ryan's personal pockets. And do you all want to know what that money was used for? Ryan lifted his head. His eyes were red and wet with tears of absolute terror. He shook his head, pleading soundlessly. No, please, God, not that one. I did not care. I clicked the button again. Slide 3. And this was the ultimate personal kill shot. On the screen was a blown-up photo of the receipt for a $25,000 diamond necklace. The date matched the exact day the embezzled money cleared. And right next to that receipt was a screenshot of Brittany's Instagram. A selfie where she proudly flaunted that exact necklace, with the caption, Gift from my future hubby. Bye-bye, old wife. The room exploded. Gasps of shock, disgust, and loud jeers blended into a massive uproar. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I said, pointing directly at Brittany, whose face was now burning bright red with humiliation. She threw her hands over her neck, desperately trying to hide the piece of criminal evidence. Corporate funds were used to buy diamonds for a mistress. A woman who is proudly sitting in the VIP section tonight, wearing the stolen evidence around her neck. I stepped down from the podium, walking slowly toward their table with the mic in my hand. My steps were calm but lethal. Brittany, I greeted, my tone sweet but poisonous. That is a gorgeous necklace. It is a real shame it was bought with stolen money. And according to the law, assets purchased with the proceeds of a felony will be seized as evidence. Brittany was shaking violently. She tried to stand up and run, but her legs gave out. She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing hysterically. I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know it was stolen. Ryan told me he was rich. He said he was loaded. I let out a crisp laugh. He is dead broke, Brittany. The house he lives in belongs to me. The car he drove to pick you up belongs to me. Even the suit he is wearing right now was bought using the grocery money he stole from my wallet. I turned my gaze to Ryan, who was now completely obliterated. He had buried his face in his arms on the table. His shoulders were shaking uncontrollably. Ryan, I called out. I lowered the microphone, speaking just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. This afternoon, you asked me why I even bothered to dress up. You told me I only belonged in the kitchen, washing a mountain of dirty dishes. I leaned in slightly, bringing my face close to his ear. Look around you right now. Look at hundreds of billionaires staring at you with absolute disgust. Look at your destroyed career. Look at your mother passing out from humiliation. Look at your mistress crying in terror. I stood back up, looking down at him with the gaze of a monarch who had just handed down a death sentence. You were right about one thing, Ryan. There is a lot of trash piling up that needs to be taken out. But it is not in the kitchen. I pointed a finger right at his face. The trash is sitting right here in this VIP chair. I turned back to face the audience and looked at the lead investor. Mr. Gallagher, I said firmly. As the majority shareholder, I motioned for a vote of no confidence regarding Ryan. I am terminating his employment immediately, with cause, and I am pressing full criminal charges. Mr. Gallagher stood up, clapping slowly but firmly. I second that motion entirely, Miss Sterling. Clean house. Instantly, applause erupted across the room. It was not polite applause. It was the thunderous applause of justice being brutally served. I watched as two plainclothes NYPD detectives stepped out from the shadows and moved forward. The cold steel of handcuffs gleamed in their hands. Ryan lifted his face, staring at me with hollow, dead eyes. He knew his life was over. He had not just lost his job, he lost his name, his freedom, and he finally realized he had thrown away a diamond to pick up a worthless rock. Enjoy the rest of your night in a holding cell, husband, I whispered as I turned off the microphone. The factual assault was over. His lies had been stripped naked in front of the world. Now, there was only one final act: public judgment and the real eviction. The atmosphere in the grand ballroom felt suffocating. It was as if the oxygen had turned into hot lead, pressing against the chests of everyone breathing. The grand orchestral music had completely stopped. The only sounds left were the low hum of the air conditioning and the muffled, pathetic sobbing coming from table number 1. The two plainclothes detectives who had been standing by in the shadows stepped through the crowd. Their strides were heavy and purposeful. Their eyes were locked onto a single target: Ryan. The sound of their boots against the marble floor ticked like a doomsday clock for my husband's life. Ryan, realizing the authorities were closing in, suddenly lost whatever microscopic shred of dignity he had left. He slid out of his chair and dropped to his knees on the thick carpet. His face, which had been full of arrogance when he mocked my makeup, was now slick with tears and snot. He looked up at me standing on the edge of the stage. A pathetic, begging look. The look of a coward caught red-handed. "Grace, honey. Grace, please," Ryan's voice cracked, ruined by terror. He crawled closer to the edge of the stage where I stood. "This is a misunderstanding, Grace. I can explain. Do not do this to me. We are husband and wife. A husband's disgrace is a wife's disgrace too, right?" I looked down at him from the elevated stage, feeling a wave of unfathomable disgust. He still had the audacity to play the husband card, right after he had humiliated me and paraded his mistress around as if she were his real partner. "Disgrace?" I repeated. I turned the microphone back on so the entire room could hear. "You are right, Ryan. You are a disgrace. And tonight, I am throwing that disgrace in the garbage. Ryan." One of the detectives spoke. His tone was flat but uncompromising as he pulled a folded warrant from his leather jacket. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate embezzlement, document forgery, and grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The sharp click of the steel handcuffs locking around Ryan's wrists echoed loudly in the dead silent room. Ryan screamed hysterically the second the cold metal bit into his skin. "No! No! I was framed. This is a conspiracy. Mr. Gallagher, help me. I am your best manager." Ryan thrashed around, looking wildly at the billionaire sitting nearby. Mr. Gallagher merely took a calm sip of his wine and turned his head away, treating Ryan like a fly buzzing near his food. That absolute rejection was a fatal blow. Ryan finally understood that not a single soul in this room full of elites would lift a finger to save him. Meanwhile, Brittany, who was frozen in the chair next to Ryan's empty seat, tried to seize the moment. With shaking hands, she grabbed her cheap clutch and slowly tried to stand up, attempting to inch backward into the crowd, praying no one would notice her. "Stop her," I ordered coldly. James, who had already anticipated the little rat's escape plan, signaled two female security officers standing by the left aisle. They moved swiftly, cutting off Brittany's path. "Hey, what the hell is this? Let me go," Brittany screeched as the guards grabbed her arms. "I did not do anything. I am just a guest. I do not know anything about embezzling money." I stepped down from the stage, walking slowly through the crowd. The guests automatically parted, creating a path for me like the Red Sea parting for Moses. I stopped right in front of the thrashing Brittany. Her face, previously caked in heavy makeup, was melting. Her mascara ran in thick black streaks down her cheeks, making her look like a sad, deranged clown. "You say you do not know anything?" I asked softly, though my gaze stabbed straight into her pupils. "Your bank account says otherwise, Brittany. A wire transfer of $100,000 hit your account the exact same day that fake vendor invoice was paid. You enjoyed stolen corporate funds. That makes you an accessory to grand larceny and receiving stolen property." Brittany shook her head in a wild panic. "It was a gift. Ryan said it was his bonus." "I swear to God, Grace, I didn't know. I am just a victim of this lying creep." She pointed at the handcuffed Ryan with a face full of hatred. What a truly hilarious sight. Two people who, an hour ago, were showering each other with praise and affection, were now pointing fingers and throwing each other under the bus to save their own skins. True love? Total garbage. Their love only extended as far as his bank balance and the jewelry around her neck. I pointed at her chest. "Take it off right now. That is corporate property." "No. It is mine. It is a gift." Brittany tried to cover the necklace with her hands. "Take it off, or the police will forcefully remove it from you and add resisting arrest to your growing list of felonies," I threatened. With shaking hands and loud, obnoxious sobbing, Brittany unclasped the diamond necklace. She threw it at me, but James swiftly caught it with a white-gloved hand, acting as if the object was entirely too filthy to touch directly. "Take her away. She will be interrogated as a key witness and a co-conspirator," I ordered the detectives. Brittany shrieked and wailed as she was dragged away. Her screams about her rights were completely drowned out by the mocking scoffs of the elite guests. Now, there was only one person left. Martha. My mother-in-law was still sitting in her chair. Her body was violently trembling. Her face was as pale as a corpse. She stared at Ryan being dragged away by the cops, then turned to look at me. Her eyes radiated a bizarre mix of terror, humiliation, and totally unjustified anger. She forced herself to stand, her legs wobbling. Armed with the last remnants of her fake bravery, she pointed a finger at my face. "Grace, how dare you? What kind of wife treats her husband like an animal? In front of all these people? You have no heart! My son is the breadwinner of this family." The guests began whispering again, this time sounding completely baffled by the old woman's sheer delusion. I smiled a tragic, mocking smile. "You are still talking about him being a breadwinner? A breadwinner whose bones are entirely hollowed out by corruption?" I took one step forward, causing Martha to stumble back in fear. "For 3 years, you insulted me. You called me a freeloader. You called me a parasite. You constantly compared me to Brittany, saying she had more class. Now, look closely, Martha. Who is the actual parasite here? The house you and Ryan live in. The house you bragged to the neighbors about being the fruit of your son's labor. The deed is in my name, but your golden boy secretly mortgaged it to pay off his gambling debts," I stated ruthlessly. This brutal fact made Martha's eyes blow wide open. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The car you drove here tonight is a company fleet vehicle that Ryan stole the keys to. And the dress and tacky jewelry you are wearing right now were bought using the grocery money Ryan skimmed from my wallet every month." I took a deep breath, finally shedding the heavy burden I had carried in my chest for years. "Tonight, you and all your belongings need to be out of my house. I am sending a team to change the locks in exactly 1 hour. If you are still on the property, I will have you arrested for criminal trespassing. You are kicking your own mother-in-law out onto the street?" Her voice shook wildly. Her tears finally fell. Not tears of regret, but tears of mourning the loss of her free ride. "I am not kicking out my mother-in-law," I replied coldly. "I am kicking out a stranger who conspired to destroy my marriage. James, escort this woman out. Make sure she does not leave with a single item that belongs to Sterling Enterprises." "Yes, ma'am," James signaled the security team. Martha bawled loudly, wailing Ryan's name, calling out to her late husband, desperately fishing for sympathy. But nobody cared. In the eyes of the corporate elite in this room, there was no sin greater than being a fraud and lacking self-awareness. Ryan was dragged out the grand ballroom doors with his head hung low, greeted by the blinding flashes of press cameras that had somehow gathered outside. This was going to be tomorrow morning's front-page headline: "Scandal at Sterling Enterprises. Executive arrested at grand opening gala." Brittany was perp-walked right behind him, still cursing her terrible luck, and Martha was escorted out by security, her legs practically giving out as she faced the reality that tomorrow she would be homeless. Once the massive double doors slammed shut behind them, silence blanketed the room once more. But this time, it was different. It was a silence filled with absolute respect. I stood alone in the center of the room, bathed in the glow of the crystal chandeliers. I felt exhausted, so incredibly tired, but at the exact same time, I felt lighter than air. Like a 2,000-pound iron chain had just been unclasped from my ankles. Mr. Gallagher was the first to break the silence. He stood up and began to clap. Slowly, one by one, the other guests rose to their feet. The applause swelled, echoing like thunder through the grand ballroom. It was not polite applause for a theatrical drama. It was the applause of acknowledgement that Grace Sterling had fully returned. I offered a slight, respectful bow to the crowd, then handed the microphone back to the completely stunned MC. "Please, enjoy the dinner. And do not worry, I have already replaced the fruit with an honest vendor," I said with a faint smile before turning my back and walking off the stage. Tonight, I was no longer the wife waiting in the kitchen. Tonight, I was the queen who had just scrubbed the filth out of her empire. 6 months later, the morning air in Paris always had a distinct scent, a blend of warm croissants, freshly brewed espresso, and the refreshing aroma of absolute freedom. I stood on the balcony of my penthouse apartment, looking straight out at the Eiffel Tower. The cool autumn breeze gently brushed my face, playing with the hem of my white silk blouse. I held a warm cup of Earl Grey tea in my hands. I took a slow sip, enjoying the perfect harmony of bitterness and sweetness, exactly like my life right now. 6 months had passed since that explosive grand opening. 6 months that flew by in a blur of satisfying work. After surgically removing the rot from within the company, Sterling Enterprises' stock skyrocketed. The public and Wall Street loved my absolute ruthlessness. They saw me as a leader with uncompromising integrity, who took no prisoners. My business expanded aggressively, breaking into the European market, which was exactly why I was here now. "Good morning, Grace." James's voice echoed from the living room. He walked in carrying an iPad and several physical files. "Good morning, James. And I told you, drop the formalities when we are off the clock." "It makes me feel ancient," I joked, without turning around, still soaking in the city view. "Old habits die hard, boss," he replied with a smile. He set the files down on the glass patio table. "You have a meeting with that French luxury brand at 10. Then a lunch pitch with the German investors. But before that, I received an update from New York that you might want to hear." I turned my head, raising an eyebrow. "Legal updates?" "The final monthly report on our favorite circus trio, per your request to track them until sentencing was finalized." I set my teacup down. Honestly, I didn't care about them anymore. They were nothing but a blurry stain in my past. But there was a tiny, lingering curiosity about exactly how karma had done its job. "Give me the highlights, James." James opened his iPad and began reading with a flat, professional tone, though a hint of deep satisfaction was practically bleeding through. "First, Ryan. The judge handed down the sentence last week. He got 6 years in federal prison for multiple felonies: corporate embezzlement, document forgery, and wire fraud. Because he could not afford to pay the massive restitution fines to the company, the state seized his only remaining asset, a beat-up used Honda." "How is he doing on the inside?" I asked, sitting down on a plush rattan chair. "Pathetic. According to the warden's contacts, Ryan gets pushed around a lot by the other inmates because he tried to act like a big-shot CEO when he first arrived. They assigned him to janitorial duty. His job is scrubbing the toilets in the maximum security cell block. You can imagine how awful that is. He is losing weight rapidly, his hair is thinning from the stress and terrible hygiene, and he cries constantly, begging the guards to let him order real food. But no one has ever visited him. Not once." I nodded slowly. The irony was almost poetic. He used to scream at me to finish my kitchen chores and wash his dishes because he thought it was peasant work. Now, he was spending the rest of his youth scrubbing other men's filth. Karma truly had a very dark sense of humor. Next, Brittany. Brittany got 1 year in a minimum security facility for receiving stolen property. But the social punishment was much worse. Her mugshot went completely viral. The internet tore her apart so badly she had to permanently delete all her social media accounts. Her parents in the Midwest were so humiliated they practically disowned her. The latest report says she throws hysterical fits in her cell because she can't handle living without air conditioning and her expensive skincare routines. Her face broke out in massive cystic acne from the stress and the hard prison water. The girl who worshipped vanity above all else has completely lost her looks. Justice served. And Martha? James let out a long sigh. This one is the most tragic. After you evicted her from the house, she bounced around, sleeping on the couches of distant relatives. But they all eventually kicked her out because she was too bossy and incredibly arrogant. Now, she lives in a tiny, run-down trailer park in a sketchy part of New Jersey that floods every time it rains. To pay her lot fee and buy groceries, she took a minimum wage job as a fry cook at a cheap, greasy diner by the highway. A fry cook? I was genuinely surprised. The woman who constantly flaunted her gold bracelets and complained that I smelled like bleach and onions was now standing over a deep fryer for $10 an hour? Yes. And because her face was all over the viral news clips, none of the other waitresses or neighbors want anything to do with her. She lives entirely alone. Her health is failing, and the diner staff say she is constantly muttering to herself, crying out for Ryan. I fell silent for a moment, staring up at the bright blue Parisian sky. There was no pity in my heart. But there was no hatred left either. There was only a vast, empty sense of absolute relief. They had reaped exactly what they sowed. They planted arrogance and betrayal, so they harvested destruction and agonizing loneliness. That is enough, James. Close the file. Do not ever bring them up again. They are exactly where they belong, I said, standing up and smoothing out my blazer. Understood, boss. Oh, the town car is waiting downstairs. I walked back inside the apartment and grabbed my designer briefcase. Before walking out the door, I caught my reflection in the large hallway mirror. The Grace, staring back at me, smiled. It was not a fake smile used to hide deep wounds, but the smile of a truly liberated woman. A woman who held absolute control over her own destiny. I remembered Ryan's words from that afternoon. Did you really think you were invited? I let out a soft laugh. You were right, Ryan. I wasn't invited to your narrow, pathetic little world built on lies. Because I was too busy building an empire of my own, a world where honesty is rewarded, and betrayal has absolutely nowhere to hide. I stepped out the door, ready to conquer the day. A mountain of work was waiting for me, but this time, it was work that I loved, not kitchen chores forced upon me by a coward. I am Grace Sterling, and my story has just begun.